Former United States Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland joins the We're Out of Time podcast.
In the movies, an ambassador is someone who is always dressed formally. They're giving parties. There's an orchestra playing in the background, and they're saying very profound things. What an ambassador really is an agent and a representative of the President of the United States. So when the president can't be in another country, and a president can't be in every country at the same time, you as the ambassador are legally and practically his stand-in. My own background, what really gave me an impetus to do this job, to build my own business, was the fact that I'm the son of Holocaust survivors.
We're Out of Time has reached number 3 on the Apple Podcasts mental health chart. Thank you for listening, supporting, and sharing this journey with us. Please follow the podcast, rate, and review. And if you're getting value out of We're Out of Time, share it with someone else you know.
Hey, Gordon, how you doing?
Good, Richard. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine. So give me an example of one thing that you are working on, if you can.
Sure. Well, first of all, let's talk about what an ambassador is. In the movies, an ambassador is someone who is always dressed formally. They're giving parties. There's an orchestra playing in the background. People are sipping champagne and eating canapes. And they're saying very profound things to their, foreign interlocutor about the state of the world with respect to our country and that country. And it's sort of this stilted idea that that's what a diplomat is. What an ambassador really is an agent and a representative of the President of the United States. So when the president can't be in another country, and a president can't be in every country at the same time, you as the ambassador are legally and practically his stand-in. So you are essentially running a mini White House in the embassy or the mission that you're in charge of. So all of the people that work there, whether they work for the Agriculture Department or the Defense Department or the Commerce or the intelligence community, the CIA or the other alphabet agencies, they work for you. They don't work for Washington, because you are the President of the United States in that, as his surrogate in that place. So it comes with an enormous amount of responsibility and an enormous amount of authority, because you actually have the right to bind the United States as the president would.
You're so likable.
It's not to the Europeans, I wasn't.
Why?
Because I had to give them some hard news about the state of our relationship and some things that President Trump, who was my commander-in-chief, and every president, Democrat or Republican, has their ambassadors, and they have to deliver sometimes friendly messages, and they have to sometimes deliver tough messages.
Yeah, but you make friends with you're so easy to make friends with. Isn't it? That had to serve you well. So when you were giving people, uncomfortable news, it would be like, love Gordon, let's work this out. No?
A little, to be fair. They didn't like the message, and sometimes they would blame the messenger, because I also have a fairly informal personality, which doesn't necessarily go over well with some of the stodgier.
You know what? That sucks.
It does.
I hate that. That is so weak.
You want an example?
I do.
So I'll tell you a story. When I first arrived, I had what was called the country team meeting, which is pretty much all of the senior staff at the mission. And
what's the mission?
The mission, you have an embassy or you have a mission. An embassy is the organization that is the United States sovereign ground in a foreign country. So when you're in the U.S. embassy in France and you're inside the embassy, you're actually in the United States, as long as you're in that building. In the case of the EU, we don't have an embassy because the EU is not a country; it's an organization.
Right.
Belgium, where the EU is based, has a U.S. embassy. And that's the embassy to Belgium, and it has a U.S. ambassador to Belgium. I was next door, and I had the mission to the European Union, which is like an embassy, but it's called a mission.
Yeah, but it seems like it's a bigger deal. How many countries are in the EU? 20?
There were 28 when I started, and we lost one called the UK because that was during Brexit and they left. So we wound up with 27.
That didn't work out well.
Well, that's a whole other story.
Right.
So when I sat down with the group initially, when I first got there, I said, I would like to meet with the president of the European Commission, who was sort of Donald Trump's European equivalent. And they looked at me.
Don't tell him that.
One of the senior people looked at me in sort of a condescending way, like, you'll learn, sir, this is new to you. President Juncker, his name was Jean-Claude Juncker. Uh-huh. President Juncker is a president. He meets with other presidents. You are an ambassador. You meet with other ambassadors, which was a not so nice way of saying you're in way over your skis.
Right.
And I looked,
or you're not important to
or you're not important.
That's how I would have taken it.
Fair enough.
Did that piss you off?
Well, I looked at the woman who delivered this message, who was a senior career diplomat, and I said, I'm not an ambassador. And she said, what do you mean you're not an ambassador? I said, I'm the ambassador of the United States of America. We're not all created equal. I said, the ambassador from Malta or the ambassador from Senegal and the ambassador from the United States, not to pick on those two other countries, do not have the same status. Sorry to say. So please communicate with President Juncker's office that I'd like to see him tomorrow, if possible, at 4:00. And I got a lot of eye rolls. I went back to my office. 2 hours later, staff member came into my office. Mr. Ambassador, I have some bad news for you. President Juncker cannot see you at 4:00 tomorrow. He can see you at 3:00. So I said, great, I'll go over. I just want to talk to him. I want to get to know him. He's about to come to the White House, have a meeting with President Trump. I want to see what's on his mind, how we can bridge any gaps before the meeting to make the meeting go better. They said, sir, that's not how it works. We're going to have an intensive briefing. We couldn't even believe you could get this meeting. So now we have to have an intensive briefing, and you're going to arrive with a delegation of 6 or 8 people, and they're going to have a delegation of 6 or 8 people. And they described the whole thing. There's going to be a long table with flags on it, and you're going to sit in the middle on...
What horse shit.
Exactly. So I said, do we really have to do all of this? I just want to talk to the guy. No, this is the way it works. So the next day, I go in my motorcade to the EU building, which is called Berlaymont.
Right.
And there's a long sort of hallway that enters where the president of the EU sits. And they said, you need to walk down the hall, and there'll be a backdrop. You're going to stop at the backdrop. He's going to come out, and you're going to both turn. There'll be cameras and press. They'll take your picture, and then you'll start the formal meeting. And I thought to myself, that's the last thing I want to do, because the formal meeting will accomplish nothing. Everyone will have their talking points. Everyone will have their script, and it'll be polite and nice, but we're not going to get anything done. So as he's coming toward me, I've never met the guy in my life. I've obviously seen him on TV, seen him in the newspaper. He comes walking toward me. I come walking toward him. And as we get within, 10, 20 feet of each other, I put out my arms like this and I go, Jean-Claude. And he looks at me and he goes, Gordon. Gives me a big hug, gives me a kiss. He's a big kisser.
Right.
And I said, Jean-Claude, it was great for you to see me on such short notice. You've put out a spread here. You have all these people. Do you mind if before we start all of this that you and I maybe chat for a couple of minutes one-on-one? Of course. Come into my office. Go into his office, shut the door, takes off his shoes, sits in his easy chair, lights up a smoke. He was a huge smoker. We never had the meeting outside. They were all sitting there cooling their heels. There were like 20 people waiting.
Good.
And we talked for an hour and a half. We exchanged cell phone numbers. And that was the end of having the career staff interfere with what I thought was a very, very important and impactful process. Because at that point, I just called him and he called me. And we had none of this, as you call it, horse shit.
That's exactly the way it should be. Exactly the way it should be. 2 guys who are friendly, who want to work something out and do. The other stuff just drives me insane. What I want to talk about is Vladimir Putin. Okay. I'm of the belief that he only responds to strength. That's it. Only. He doesn't care about anything else other than expansion, power, and money. What's your feeling?
You're dead on. And I think Trump knows that. Here's the rub.
So he just gave him a chance. So what's he doing with this? What's he been doing so far?
Well, again, there's a bigger issue than Ukraine. And the bigger issue is called China. And Russia has been an important conduit for the survival of Iran, for the survival of North Korea, for the survival of several other malign Middle Eastern countries that are not our friends.
Right.
And I think Trump sees the chess move. He's not playing checkers, he's playing chess. And by the way, Putin is not cooperating with the game necessarily, but I know where Trump is trying to go.
No, he's stringing him along because he has no intention. He's an animal. He just wants to kill.
He does. And the way I say it, not to digress, is Putin's factory default setting is I'm taking Ukraine. That's his factory default setting.
And then Moldova and then wherever else.
But let's just leave it at Ukraine for the time being,
okay,
because you're not wrong. So if that's his factory default setting, then there's only one variable in the conversation. When can I get away with it? He could not get away with it under Trump 1.
Right.
He clearly could get away with it under Biden, particularly when Biden said something and it was just in passing. And of course, the press smoothed over it. It was covered, to be fair, and it's out there. You can Google the video, but they did not pummel him the way they said. He said, I will not stand, and I'm not quoting because I don't know the exact words. I will not stand for an incursion unless it's a small incursion, and then we'll see what happens. That's what Biden said.
You're kidding.
No. And it's absolutely, you can look it up online. He absolutely said it. Putin's antenna shot straight up when he heard that.
Yeah.
Because he was looking at it in context. He looked at the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He looked at our general global posture, which had been weakening. And that was his signal, for the green light. Come ahead.
It was an invitation.
Absolutely. So now Trump gets into office and he inherits what has already happened.
Right.
It did not happen under his watch. And he could do the conventional things. What are the conventional things that everyone has done in the past, both Democrat and Republican? He can condemn Putin. He can get on TV every day and call him a murderer, a massacrer, an invader, and blah, 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 blah. Putin will sit in the Kremlin and laugh. He doesn't care.
Not at all.
He can surge weapons to Ukraine and give Zelensky basically a blank check to hit Putin wherever Zelensky wants to hit him, which would basically then force Putin into a corner, because Putin can lose the war, but he can only lose it under very certain conditions that don't cause a collapse of his government. If it causes a collapse of his government, he will use nuclear weapons.
For sure.
Without question.
Without question, because all he cares about is himself.
Exactly. You're dead on.
So how
Trump? So that was the conventional way. That's what everyone has done.
Uh-huh.
Democrat or Republican, not pointing fingers at any party. Trump looks at it differently. What he has done in the past with people like Putin, Kim Jong-un, and others is he praises them in public. And first of all, it infuriates the liberal media.
Too bad.
Because they actually think that he believes what he's saying, and he doesn't. He praises them in public. In private, he says things like, I'm not quoting him, but paraphrasing, Vladimir, you're a great guy. You're unbelievable. I mean, everybody bows and scrapes. You live in these beautiful palaces. You're worth hundreds of billions of dollars. God knows how much. I love it. And I love you. But just remember, if you hit Ukraine, I got to bomb the shit out of you. I have no choice. And I probably have to kill you. But otherwise, we're going to get along great. And that's the sort of public-private message he delivers. He tried to do that this time, but The cat was already out of the bag. Putin had already invaded and was actually making gains.
He's already pregnant.
Because of the way Biden had been metering both weapons, intelligence, and also the use of the weapons.
That's exactly.
Because the Ukrainians had this Ferrari that had a 20-mile-an-hour governor on it. You can only drive the Ferrari at 20 miles an hour, even though the Ferrari will go 200. And that's the problem. So now Biden was turning it on, turning it off, and all that did was encourage Putin more and more and more. Because at the end of the day, with even moderate help from the United States, both intel and weapons, we would crush Putin. I mean, Ukraine would crush Putin, would absolutely crush him.
With all of our weapons?
Well, again, even with moderate support, because our intelligence, our weapons sophistication, our strategy, and our training between the Ukrainian people and our people are far superior to the Russians, far superior.
So how does this end?
I think the way it ends is that Putin, sadly, is going to wind up with some Ukrainian real estate. But the deal has to be that we fill Ukraine with U.S. people. And I don't mean soldiers. I mean business people. I mean people who are going to mine rare earths. I mean people who are going to set up investment banks in Ukraine, are going to rebuild their infrastructure. And so all of a sudden, in the next 5 to 10 years, Ukraine is going to be full of not just Americans, but Europeans and others. And then the message will go out to Putin. Now, if you try it again, you're going to be hitting our people, not Ukrainians. And we're not going to stand for that, which is sort of an implicit Article 5 NATO guarantee without inviting Ukraine into NATO.
Do you know what I was thinking? Remember at the very beginning of the war when they had those 250,000 soldiers on the border?
Yes. You mean when they were massing?
That's correct.
Yes.
You know what really bothered me at that time? That we didn't send a bunch of soldiers to the Baltics or Poland or wherever, and the rest of the EU did as well. Just as a show of force, like, hey, dude, you come in here, we're dealing with this. Because I don't think he would have come in. And I also think that if the EU got together, and I want to know what you think, if the EU got together and each country donated soldiers, right? And he knew they were coming.
Well, that's what a NATO force is.
But I think they're done. I think that right there says to him, I don't want to have to fire nuclear weapons. Then it's over. Then it's over for me. It's over for everybody. I'm gonna call it a day. What do you think?
There's another alternative.
Give it to me.
The other alternative is to let him save face by keeping a few hectares of Ukrainian territory that he had taken recently and changing our entire paradigm with him. In other words, we know you're a butcher. We know you're a thug. We know you're a dictator. Okay, fine. We don't have to revisit that. But you have a strong interest in a realigned relationship with the United States and with the EU. So why don't you join our team, become Team West, and let's go deal with China together. And by the way, as we're working on this, North Korea is toast and Iran is toast. That's the deal. That's where Trump really wants to go, I think. And
why won't he let Israel bomb the Iranian oil fields and nuclear buildings?
Because I think he believes he needs to give them one last shot for a complete non-enrichment deal. And if they won't do it, I think they're weeks away from doing something.
Why does he believe that these animals will keep their word?
I don't think he does. I think he knows. Look, one thing.
Then why does he want to make a deal first? Why does he want to see if there's a deal?
I really think it's in order to keep global support.
Okay, so it's just to exhaust his legislative remedies.
Well, it's to exhaust. You know, when you're going to hit, because when you hit Iran, you can't do it. You can't tiptoe. I mean, you're going to need a huge arsenal of bunker busters because there are centrifuges deep, deep, deep in the ground in Fordo and in Natanz and in other places. We have great intelligence on what's going on in Iran. I'm obviously not going to share it, but we know where all the stuff is. And
we're not going to share it off camera.
No, we know what they've got. And it's going to take a big, big effort. And frankly, our Arab friends are going to help in this if there is going to be an action in terms of airspace use, in terms of all kinds of intel and other things. But you can't, this is where you have to kill the snake. You have to cut the head off. You cannot just, lob a couple of bombs in, do a little bit of damage.
No, you got to take these mullahs out.
Yeah.
But here's my fear. The Iranian people are a good people. They're a talented people.
You ask them, they're the smartest people in the world.
Right.
And
well, yeah. If you don't believe,
there are a few of them around here, by the way. And actually they are. They're pretty smart.
So, yeah. Just to touch on Putin and Ukraine again, they're going to have to keep the land that they've received. All of it. Not a little of it. All of it.
I don't know.
The piece.
I don't know.
There's no way this guy, on my life, you're the expert, but on my life, there is no way this guy is going to give back anything.
Well, it's not about giving back. It's really about resetting the table. I think when Trump finally decides he's had enough, and you see the first step has already been taken.
Mm-hmm.
Merz, who is the new chancellor of Germany, has already committed
$5 billion.
No. But very importantly, the Germans and the NATO countries have a lot of U.S. weapons that are in their arsenals. They've been transferred to them for NATO purposes. Those weapons have been sent to Ukraine.
Really?
So, yes, a long time ago.
Okay.
But those weapons had the same restrictions on them as weapons that were directly supplied by the U.S.
And the Germans just took them off.
And the Germans just took them off. You notice the United States did not object. The United States could have said, don't you dare. Any U.S. weapon, I don't care who owns it, you are not to shoot more than 5 miles over the line or whatever. They haven't done it. And Trump is letting the Europeans take the lead here. But the next move will be for us to surge some weapons and also take the gloves off. Then Putin will be in a position to decide whether he really does want to sit down and have a serious conversation. Because first of all, he'll be displaced from some of the territory he's already taken, and they may push further into Russian territory. So Nord Stream 2 was the bane of Trump's existence in his first term.
Why?
Well, because all it did was forget about gas. It supplied gas to the Europeans, which they became hooked on. It was like this actually might be in your wheelhouse. This is about dependence.
Right.
They became dependent on Russian gas, which was cheap compared to any other gas they could get.
That's right.
And there was an enormous gush of Western dollars flowing into Russia. And that's what enabled Russia to gear up for this invasion.
Why was there American money being funneled to Russia?
Well, it was European money.
Oh, it was European.
It was European money. Okay. Western money. Yeah.
Why don't they cut off the... First of all, didn't the EU go ahead and get together like a year and a half ago and say, we're not buying any more Russian oil?
Well, so first of all, someone sabotaged the pipeline.
Oh, good. So Zelensky did.
And it shut down. We don't know who did it.
You're the best.
We don't know the best.
I want to meet you so bad. I want you on this podcast so bad. I can't take it.
We don't know who did it. But
right. I don't either.
But the bottom line is what Trump wanted to do was to say, look, let's curtail your use of that gas because all it's doing is giving Putin a pile of money to commit malign activities. And let's sell you U.S. gas. They use the term freedom gas. It's going to cost you a little more.
Is that like the Gulf? Is that like the Gulf of America?
Like the Gulf of America.
Dude, I swear to God, I call it the Gulf of America now.
Yeah, everyone does.
Do they?
People are saying. I mean, everyone I'm talking to, people everywhere are saying it's called the Gulf of America. It's the biggest and best Gulf I've ever seen.
It's a gorgeous Gulf.
It's a beautiful Gulf. We don't do anything but beautiful Gulfs.
Right. No.
And now we have the Arabian Gulf instead of the Persian Gulf.
He calls it the Arabian Gulf?
It's now called the Arabian Gulf.
Why?
Well, because in honor of our new hosts in Saudi Arabia.
That makes sense.
Yeah. We're going to rename a lot of things.
That makes sense.
But back to what we asked the Europeans to do is we wanted to start a superhighway across the Atlantic, sending LNG ships, liquid natural gas ships, back and forth to Portugal, which is sort of the closest point of, disembarkation in Europe, between the US and Europe, and basically wean them off of their need for any cheap Russian gas so that it would, number one, lower Russia's leverage. They would have no more leverage because they couldn't shut the valve off. They'd say, fine, shut the valve off. We're not using your fucking gas anyway. And number two, it would shut off the flow of money to Russia from the EU. And Trump, beat that issue senseless through me and through other ambassadors. And the EU was too hooked. It was like crack for them. I mean, it fueled
their... get off?
How do they get off?
Well, did they get off? Or are we still...
They're still taking some of it.
This is why.
Because there are multiple pipes, not just Nord Stream 2.
But why would they buy any...
But now that the invasion has happened, all of a sudden they become very sober. Because when this was going on during Trump 1, they never thought that Russia would invade again. They had a very, very Pollyannish view of Russia.
Why did they not believe it? It was Georgia. It was Crimea. Why did they not believe it could happen again?
Because that was then and now is now.
Got it.
We have short memories.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, the mood in Europe between 2017 and 2020, which were the Trump years, first Trump years, they thought the crying of wolf was completely overblown. Putin is our friend. We're doing business in Russia. He's doing business with us. He's selling us cheap gas. You guys are just trying to start fights everywhere. That was their attitude.
Right.
Not everyone's. The Easterners knew exactly what Putin was up to.
Right.
But the French, the Germans, the Italians, the Dutch, they very, very Pollyannish. And
so the Eastern Europeans, they had religion, but the other guys.
Exactly. Right. But the way the EU works is, first of all, a lot of things in the EU require unanimity. Can you imagine if everything Congress did required a 100% vote? Nothing would get done. Nothing. There's always going to be someone who says no. And that's what the EU faces in almost everything they do.
But NATO does the same thing.
They do. But NATO, the stakes are different in NATO. NATO, you're talking about, nuclear war. You're talking about life and death. In Europe, you could be talking about something as simple as, should we allow the Americans to sell chicken, which they consider chlorinated chicken. It's not. It's actually very sanitary chicken. We don't get diseases like they do from their chicken because we clean it with a vinegar solution, and they call it chlorine. So they say, we don't want to eat your chlorinated chicken. So I sort of asked the group at the European Roundtable one day, I had them all in, the heads of every major European company were there, like 30 people. I said, let me ask you guys a question before we start our lunch and our program. How many of you have a place in the US, like an apartment or a house or a condo or something? Everyone raised their hand. Everyone has something in the US because they're here all the time. Right. I said, so let me understand how this works. When you travel to your apartment in New York, do you have your car flown over to New York so you have something to drive? And do you have all your food shipped over to your apartment from Europe? Because you can't possibly drive our cars or eat our food. It's not safe or healthy. And they all laughed. And they said, I think the chairman of one of the big companies, who I will not name, said, this has nothing to do with safety or quality. This is all protectionism. And that's what Trump is livid about.
Right. Why isn't there free trade throughout the world? It seems like that would be something that, to a lay person, okay, it seems like that's something that would resolve all of this.
Well, Trump proposed that to Juncker, the guy that kissed me and took me into his office.
Right.
Early on in the trade negotiations, he said, why don't we try something like this, Jean-Claude? Why don't we drop all the tariffs, all the non-tariff barriers to entry, which is really his issue. It's not about the tariffs. It's about all the rules and the regulations, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and we're going to fine you and we're going to sue you. Let's drop all of that. We can sell you anything we want to sell you. You can sell us anything you want to sell us. If people don't want to buy the stuff, that's the problem of whoever made it.
And you would think that's a better deal for every other country but us because we're the biggest consumers in the world.
Exactly. We have the biggest market. The Europeans, by the way, were not interested in that because they want to protect their farmers. They want to protect their automobile industry. They believe without protection, they will lose the global war in the global economic battle. That's what they really believe.
What's the solution to this? Like, how does this end?
Well, I just wrote an op-ed today, which I believe is going to be published tomorrow on a major site, major network. And it basically says the Europeans this time are going to need to cross their own red lines and give Trump a win on this, because every president for 40 years has asked the Europeans to drop some of these trade barriers, and they've said no. But they haven't said no. What they've done is they've said, this is very interesting. We'll take this under advisement. We'll get back to you. And to use Trump's term, they just tap the U.S. along and nothing happens. So for the first time, Trump said, okay, fine. While you're thinking about it, it's a 50% tariff, which essentially shuts them down. And all of a sudden, within hours, forget about days, weeks, months, years, within hours, the phone rings. Okay, we want to talk. So now they have until, I believe it's July 9th to make a deal. I noticed that the Federal Trade Court just tried to stop these tariffs. I think that's temporary. I think that's going to get overturned, or there's so many loopholes in the law anyway. It's like Swiss cheese. Trump will figure out, and his team will figure out how to impose these tariffs if the Europeans do not relent on some of their protectionist policies. I really believe that.
So that was beautiful and very much appreciated, because it drives me insane. Is there anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to get out?
Well, I mean, just my own background, what really gave me an impetus to do this job, to build my own business, was the fact that I'm the son of Holocaust survivors. My parents met in Germany. They're both German. They met when they were very young. My mother married my father when she was 15, had my sister when she was 16. My father, they both had to escape Nazi Germany. My father joined the French Foreign Legion. That's the only way he could get out, and was captured, and then joined the British Army later, and stayed in Europe and fought the war, where my mother left for Uruguay, where a lot of European Jews went. The Uruguayans took them in, gave birth to my sister. And so my father saw my sister for the first time when she was about 7. And then they ultimately resettled in the United States with nothing and started over again. So it's a very, very moving background. I was the first in my family born in the United States.
Do you know that's so interesting, because we're both Jewish, right?
How can you tell?
Because you're handsome as can be.
Of course.
It's like looking in the mirror.
And we're so annoying too.
Larry, I mean, we're not exactly Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, no. Well, I have a very close friend who can't stand watching that show because she says
it's her.
It's me.
Yeah, I don't watch it.
I don't need any more of you. I'm already seeing it in you. What do I need to watch Larry David do the same thing?
And the funny part is he lives on my street, the hill, right? And he lives on Napoli, right? And I've been avoiding him since 2015 because I don't live on the golf course side of the street. I live on the other side of the tracks, right? And if you run
where the poor people live,
that's right,
yeah,
where the poor people live.
Okay,
and a tough neighborhood. And what happened is, I was told by many people, Rich, you're not going to be able to handle it, because if you ever walk up to him and say, "Oh, we're neighbors, we're on the same street," he's going to look at you and say, "Really? What hole?" So I've been avoiding him for 10 years.
Because you don't want to tell him there is no hole.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Right? So that's his thing. But what I wanted to say was, ever since October 7th, I have never been more proud to be Jewish. Never. I got into a car accident right after it happened with some guy, and he gets out of the car just screaming and belligerent. And I know he's Jewish. I mean, I just know it. We know, right?
It's Judar.
It's Judar.
We have Judar.
We do have Judar. And I look at this guy and I go, hey, baby, after last week, we don't treat each other like that anymore. And he goes,
we're mishpocha.
He goes, you're right. And I gave him a hug. I said, this is just things.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Okay.
There are some Gentiles that own insurance companies that will pay for this.
That's correct. These wasps in Connecticut, right? We'll take care of this.
They'll take care of it.
You're so funny. You're such a good time. Crazy. How did you feel? I mean, I know how I felt. Okay. I was kid happy. Remember kid happy?
Yeah.
It's like you weren't kid happy. The last time you were kid happy was probably when you were a kid, right? Okay. Me too. Except for when the pagers went off, and then the next day when the walkie-talkies went off and took out their entire command structure. What was on your mind?
That will go down in history, by the way, as one of the most successful intelligence operations ever.
Ever.
Because the amount of time and effort and planning and
what it was like 7 years?
The years that went by to do that, and the fact that they were able to keep it such close hold, because that would have otherwise leaked, and someone who was within the need to know that potentially didn't have the same political leanings as the people who initiated that would have leaked it to the media, and it would have been a disaster.
So it had to be just a few people dealing with it.
It was one of the biggest secrets that Israel had. And it was so effective, not because of its lethality, but because of its shock value.
Right.
That something that's so intimate as your personal device that is in your pocket, that someone else has control over it and can kill you. There is a shock value to that is beyond any amount of boom that these explosives were able to generate.
I heard these people wouldn't even turn on a computer or a television. They were like afraid of their toaster.
And they also know this isn't the end. Israel has other tricks up its sleeve. They know this is not a one and done.
Yeah. I've never been more proud.
So now we have a situation in Gaza. And of course, again, Trump starts the conversation with an extreme position, which is an interesting position. He's saying, okay, the U.S. is going to take over Gaza, and we're going to redevelop it into a luxury area.
How's that going to work?
Well, but think about what he's actually saying.
Cut a deal or I'm taking your shit.
No, not necessarily. What he's saying is, do I want to do this? Do I have other things to do in the world other than develop Gaza? Yes. But I haven't heard from anyone. I haven't heard from the Egyptians. I haven't heard from the Saudis. I haven't heard from the Qataris. I haven't heard from anyone that will do this. Who's going to fix this problem? You have a piece of dirt on the Mediterranean that is Swiss cheese right now. You have tunnels underground everywhere.
On 1 second. I just need to interrupt you.
Yeah.
That thing should never, ever, ever, ever be rebuilt. It should stand as a monument to f*** around and find out. Otherwise, it never ends. It needs to stand as a monument to, this is what's happening to you if you screw around.
See, I don't agree with that.
I want to know why.
Well, because I do think there is a path forward here, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of money. And what it needs to be is it needs to be a community project. And by community, I mean, yes, it needs to involve the Israelis because their security is immediately impacted because of the proximity. It needs to involve all of the Abraham Accords signatories, and hopefully the Saudis will sign on soon. Mm-hmm. And it needs to be a project where Hamas cannot take root again, because there's too many other people there who want to do business, who want to live their lives, who want to make deals. Israel and the U.S. are providing security along with others, not just Israel and the U.S. And all of a sudden, what it does is it denies Hamas a place to exist. And that's the key. But it's going to take an enormous amount of money and time to get the land ready to build on. You can't build on Swiss cheese.
Why do you think it's a good idea? Why do you think it's better than the idea of leaving it?
Because I don't think we need any more Holocaust memorials and any more shrines to destruction. I think what we need to do is need to move forward and have a great piece of real estate, generate housing for people of Arabs and Jews. I think we need to have economic development there. I think that's been the problem.
Animals. They're going to lob rockets in all the time. It's like not the French Riviera.
Well,
I mean, it's great real estate. Don't get me wrong.
There are groups that are animals, and there are groups that, look at the Arabs living in Israel and peacefully coexisting.
Different.
They are different, but those are the kinds of Arabs you want living in Gaza.
Well, those are the kind of but they're not.
But they will be, especially if the entire area is now controlled by a community, not by Iran, not by Israel, but by a little bit of everyone, including the U.S., by the way. I think the U.S. has a role there.
I think there's a better chance of me sleeping with Charlize Theron.
What time's your date?
If that girl's smart, she didn't have anything to do with me, that's for sure. So you're the best storyteller and really the best interviewer. So thank you for carrying me today.
I don't think so.
Oh, definitely. Where was your talk with Vice President Pence? Was it in Florida or was it in the Hamptons?
I think it was in the Hamptons.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it was in the Hamptons.
And so I was speaking there, and right after me, you come on with the vice president, which did not suck, by the way, made me feel really good.
We followed you.
Right afterwards.
Yeah, that's right.
And you come on stage with him, and he's not a comedian. Okay. Very good man, nice man, loves his country. But he's not a comedian. And you carried that interview so magnificently. I thought this man should have his own band and talk show.
Well, Mike is a very, very good person.
Right. I got it.
And I am really sorry about the rift that occurred between he and President Trump. I like them both very much.
Right.
I understand why the rift occurred, and I don't expect the vice president who thought that his life was truly in danger for a moment, and B, that he had no choice other than to do what he did by not going along with the notion that he could somehow interfere in the election process. Trust me, if anyone wanted to be vice president for another term, it was Mike Pence.
Right.
He truly enjoyed that job. He truly enjoyed serving with President Trump. He was one of the most important, if not the most important voice in the room, talking to President Trump when no one else was in the room. He was sometimes the last voice. So all of those things basically lean toward, yes, I want to keep doing this at all costs, but not at the cost of violating the Constitution or breaking the law. I don't want it that badly.
Can I ask you about China for a second? And I know you're not an expert on fentanyl, but one of the things I like that president, I call him the fentanyl president, right? One of the things that he's doing right now, I believe, with the tariffs is getting China's head right, because they're the most surveilled country in the world. They know where all their citizens are at all times. So they're looking the other way when the precursor chemicals to make fentanyl are being shipped to Mexico, right?
Well, I don't think they're looking the other way. I think they're complicit.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
If by looking the other way, they are complicit.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think they're assisting in the effort, not just saying, go ahead.
I don't think they're assisting in the effort.
Oh, you don't?
I don't think they have to. I think it's motivated by money, and she just turns his.
Well, it also is a way of exercising soft power, which is you get people hooked or killed on that substance. They don't have to shoot a bullet at an enemy. They let the enemy kill themselves with that drug.
Oh, it's worse than that, because, I own a Carrera treatment center, right?
I do.
And I also own an affordable center called One Method. And I've been treating the military and veterans for the last 17 years. And I've realized that under the last year and a half, when you walk into treatment, you do an assessment. You walk up to the nurse and she says, what are you using? How much? How long? And the whole health history, right? These people are swearing up and down that they're not doing fentanyl. And they're not lying because half of them, or more than half, are saying, yeah, I'm doing fentanyl. But the ones that swear up and down that they're not doing fentanyl are doing fentanyl, but they don't know they're doing it. And so I think it's a national security issue. You know, what do you think President Trump is doing to curtail the fentanyl coming, China sending precursor chemicals to Mexico? Because I think he's done a really good job with the border and not letting the fentanyl in.
Well, you notice that the top of the list, whenever he brings up our trade issues with China, and people are saying, what do you want China to do? And there's the usual litany of things we want China to do. Stop stealing our IP, you know, stop stealing our intel, sending people to university here where we have a free open university system. You're sending your people basically just to steal for you, you know, stop copying our stuff. I mean, that's the usual litany of complaints we have against China. Stop subsidizing industries unnaturally to give them an advantage they would never have but for state subsidies. There's a whole list of the stops. What he's done is he's moved fentanyl to the top of the list. He talks about fentanyl all the time when he talks about China. They're the number one producer of the precursors. And as you say, they're turning their head the other way. So I think he's bringing it, you know, to the top of the agenda. Where it's going to go and what the Chinese can prove to him tangibly to show that they've actually changed policy. I'm not enough of an expert to know the answer to that.
You want to know what's funny? I read something about you on the way here that was exactly like me. I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, I heard one time you were talking about turn down service, and if a light bulb is out, you go insane. And is that true?
Sure.
The funniest
in
part,
one of my hotels? Absolutely.
Do you know the funniest thing is I run my place like I'm Suge Knight. If there is a light bulb out, I lose my mind. If turn down service isn't perfect, I lose my mind. I expect perfection. That's it. Just perfection. And I expect them to meet someone's need before they know they have a need.
Yeah, it's called anticipatory hospitality.
Oh, is that what they call it?
Well, everybody has their own name for it. You know, I remember one of my favorite hotels in the world, actually, is just down the street, the Peninsula Beverly Hills.
Oh, fantastic.
It's one of the best run hotels. And I remember getting into my car. I was going out for the day on business. And the valets, you know, are trained to be friendly and make small talk, not just hand you your keys.
Right.
So they reach in and help you with your seatbelt. That's one of the things they're trained to do. They offer you water. And they said, you know, Mr. Sondland, did you have a good night's sleep? And they're expecting me to say, yes, it was great, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know, as a matter of fact,
I stayed up all night doing blow.
I said, I made some comment about I had a stiff neck or I wasn't sleeping well the night before. He said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Never thought any more about it. I went out for the day.
And they brought you Tylenol and Advil.
No, I got back to my room, probably 6 o'clock. I go in the room and fanned out on the bed are 6 different pillows with a note saying, perhaps one of these pillows will help your stiff neck tonight.
So magnificent.
So here is a valet who has nothing to do with housekeeping.
That's right.
Clearly communicating the message to the housekeeping department because he picked up on my cue. It wasn't just small talk to him. He was genuinely interested. Because if it was just small talk, that would have been the end of it. He would have taken his tip and moved on to the next car. But he took the time to walk to the phone, call the housekeeping supervisor and say, Mr. Sondland just left. He's in room whatever. Please give him some pillows. He has a neck problem.
If you knew his name, I would go to the Peninsula right after this and hire him.
This happened years ago, but it's an example.
Well, now he's
probably got his own hotel.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
But No, I'm the same way. And, hospitality is in my blood. And that's why I hate staying at my own hotels, because I can never relax.
No, I won't even.
If you're going to go to treatment, you're going to go to someone else's treatment center, right?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not going to need treatment.
Good.
I'm going to be okay.
Good.
Yeah. Man, this was the best time ever.
Good. Did that work out?
Did it work out?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen your show.
I had the ambassador to the European Union on my podcast in my home, who's about to take a sandwich with him. Yeah, it worked out well for me.
That's great.
Yeah.
I was really enjoyed doing it.
Hey,
thank you.
See you next Tuesday.
If you or a loved one is struggling, we have a number that you can call, and we'll help you find the best treatment that is right for you. Our company, One Call Placement, is dedicated to helping you, and we'll find the best treatment that is right for you. So call now at 888-808-6159. Again, that's 888-808-6159.
We're out of time. Please subscribe on YouTube, click the thumbs up, and leave a comment. Please subscribe on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and leave a rating and a review. And share the We're Out of Time podcast with others you know who will get value out of it. See you next Tuesday.